A wise woman does not believe that she has to tell a man everything to prove that she trusts him. She does not believe that complete exposure is the same thing as intimacy. And she certainly does not believe that revealing every weakness will automatically make someone love her more. No. A wise woman understands the difference between being open and being exposed. She knows that trust is earned. She knows that vulnerability is valuable. And she knows that some information should only be shared with someone who has demonstrated the maturity, character, and respect to handle it. So today we are going to uncover two things a wise woman should never casually tell a man: not to play games, not to manipulate him, and not to create mystery, but to understand the importance of emotional boundaries, self-respect, and intelligent communication. Because sometimes the strongest woman in the room is not the one who says the most. She is the one who knows exactly what to say, what to share, and what to keep sacred. And once you understand this, you will begin to see your relationships and yourself very differently. A woman can be confident and still have insecurities. She can be successful and still have moments when she questions herself. She can appear strong in public while privately struggling with fears that very few people know about. This is part of being human. The goal is not to become a person without weaknesses. The goal is to understand your weaknesses without allowing them to control your identity. There is something powerful about knowing yourself deeply. When you know what makes you uncomfortable, what triggers your fear, what causes you to doubt yourself, and what experiences have shaped the way you see relationships, you become more capable of making wise decisions. Self-awareness is not weakness. Self-awareness is the beginning of strength. But there is a difference between understanding your insecurities and giving another person unlimited access to them. Not every person who shows interest in you has earned the right to know the deepest places of your heart. Attraction does not equal trust. Attention does not equal character. Chemistry does not equal emotional safety. This is a lesson many people learn only after being hurt. Someone can make you feel understood in the beginning. They can listen to your stories, ask thoughtful questions, and make you feel comfortable enough to reveal things you normally keep private. But time reveals what first impressions cannot. How does this person behave when they are angry? How do they respond when you disagree? Do they respect your boundaries? Do they keep private conversations private? Do they use your vulnerabilities to understand you, or do they use them to control you? These questions matter because vulnerability creates responsibility. When you tell someone your deepest fear, you are not simply giving them information. You are giving them an opportunity to either protect that information or misuse it. That is why a wise woman does not rush emotional exposure. She allows trust to develop naturally. Imagine building a house. You would not give a stranger access to every room simply because they complemented the outside of the house. You would first determine whether they respected the entrance. You would observe their behavior. You would learn whether they could be trusted with smaller responsibilities before giving them greater access. Relationships require the same kind of discernment. You can be kind without being completely exposed. You can be loving without abandoning your boundaries. You can be honest without telling every detail of your emotional history. And you can admit that you are working on yourself without turning another person into the manager of your self-worth. This is especially important when it comes to insecurity. If you constantly tell someone, "I'm afraid you will leave me, I'm not good enough," or "I don't think I'm attractive enough," you may eventually begin depending on that person's reassurance to feel secure. At first, their reassurance may feel comforting. But if your confidence depends entirely on their words, what happens when they become busy? What happens when they disagree with you? What happens when they fail to reassure you? What happens when conflict enters the relationship? Your emotional stability begins to rise and fall according to another person's behavior. That is not inner strength. A healthy relationship should complement your confidence, not manufacture it. You should be able to receive reassurance without becoming addicted to reassurance. There is a difference. A mature woman can say, "I sometimes struggle with this and I'm working on it." That is healthy. But she does not repeatedly demand that someone else prove her worth. She works on building that worth within herself. She reminds herself that one person's rejection does not define her. One person's criticism does not define her. One person's inability to recognize her value does not eliminate that value. This is why personal development matters. Before asking someone else to love you completely, Learn to understand yourself completely. Know your strengths. Know your weaknesses. Know your standards. Know your boundaries. Know what you are willing to accept and what you are not willing to accept. The more secure you become within yourself, the less tempted you will be to reveal private vulnerabilities simply to gain approval. And this does not mean becoming emotionally closed. It means becoming emotionally intelligent. There will be people who deserve your vulnerability. There will be relationships where sharing your fears creates deeper connection. There will be moments when honesty requires you to reveal something difficult. Share those things when trust has been established. Share them when the relationship has demonstrated safety. Share them because you genuinely want to communicate, not because you are afraid that silence will cause someone to leave. There is a great difference between vulnerability offered freely and vulnerability surrendered out of fear. One comes from strength, the other comes from insecurity. So do not be ashamed of your weaknesses. Learn from them, work on them, heal what you can, seek wisdom, build your confidence. But remember, your vulnerability is valuable. Do not give everyone access to it. Let people earn deeper access through consistency, respect, honesty, and character. Because the wisest woman is not the woman who has no insecurities. She is the woman who knows her insecurities, refuses to be ruled by them, and understands that her deepest vulnerabilities should be entrusted only to people who have proven they can handle them with care. That is not playing games. That is wisdom. That is self-respect. And that is emotional maturity. A wise woman understands that trust should never be confused with immediate access. When you meet someone and begin developing feelings, there can be a natural desire to open up quickly. You want him to know your story. You want him to understand your struggles. You want to feel seen and accepted. That desire is completely human. But wisdom teaches you to slow down and recognize that emotional closeness should develop alongside demonstrated character. There is a difference between telling someone about your life and giving someone unrestricted access to your inner world. Your life can be shared gradually. Your deepest fears, private insecurities, painful experiences, and sensitive vulnerabilities deserve greater discernment, not because you should be ashamed of them, but because they are valuable parts of you. Think about trust as something that grows through evidence. A person does not earn your deepest trust because they say the right words. They earn it through consistent behavior. They show you who they are when they are disappointed. They show you whether they respect your boundaries. They show you whether they can disagree without becoming cruel. They show you whether they can keep private things private. Character is revealed over time. That is why a wise woman does not rush to reveal everything simply because she feels emotionally connected. Sometimes attraction creates an illusion of familiarity. You can meet someone and feel as though you have known them forever. The conversations are easy. The chemistry is strong. You laugh together. You feel comfortable. And suddenly you begin telling them things that you normally keep private. But emotional excitement is not the same thing as established trust. You can enjoy someone's company while still allowing time to reveal their character. This is not about becoming distant or pretending to be someone you are not. It is about understanding that healthy relationships require boundaries. A boundary says, I can be honest with you without giving away every part of myself immediately. That is maturity. You do not have to tell a man every insecurity you have simply because he asks. You do not have to explain every painful experience from your past. You do not have to reveal the exact thing that makes you feel most vulnerable just to prove that you trust him. Let trust develop naturally. And if you decide to share something deeply personal, share it because you genuinely believe the relationship has reached a level where that vulnerability can be respected, not because you are afraid that withholding information will cause him to lose interest. That distinction matters. If you constantly reveal your deepest insecurities because you need reassurance, you can accidentally make another person responsible for maintaining your self-worth. You may begin asking, do you still think I'm beautiful? Do you still love me? Are you sure you won't leave? Do you really accept this part of me? There's nothing wrong with wanting reassurance occasionally. Healthy relationships include encouragement and emotional support, but your entire sense of value cannot depend on another person's ability to reassure you. You must know who you are when nobody is applauding. You must know your worth when somebody disagrees with you. You must be able to stand firmly when another person's attention changes. Because if someone else becomes the foundation of your confidence, then they also gain enormous power over your emotional stability. A wise woman builds her identity before she builds a relationship. She knows what she believes. She knows what she values. She knows what she will accept. She knows what she will not tolerate. And she understands that vulnerability should come from strength, not desperation. There is also another lesson here. Never use your insecurities as a test. Do not tell someone your deepest fear simply to see whether they will chase you, reassure you, become jealous, or prove something to you. That turns vulnerability into manipulation. Real intimacy does not require emotional tests. If you want reassurance, communicate that honestly. If you need support, ask for it directly. If something hurts you, explain it calmly. You do not need to create emotional confusion to discover whether someone cares. And when someone proves themselves trustworthy, do not be afraid to open up. Wisdom is not silence. Wisdom is discernment. There will come a point in a healthy relationship when vulnerability becomes necessary. You cannot build genuine intimacy while hiding everything. Two people eventually need to understand each other's fears, dreams, values, struggles, and hopes. But healthy vulnerability happens progressively. You reveal, they respond. You observe, trust grows. Then you reveal a little more. That is how emotional safety is created. You are not building a wall around your heart. You are building a gate, and you are learning who deserves to walk through it. Never apologize for having boundaries. Never feel guilty for taking your time. Never believe that you must expose your deepest wounds to earn someone's love. The right relationship will allow you to become known without forcing you to become exposed. And the wiser you become, the more you understand that your vulnerability is not something to distribute carelessly. It is something to honor. So do not be afraid to be open. Just be intentional. Do not be afraid to love. Just remain grounded. Do not be afraid to trust. Just let trust be earned through character. Because a woman who knows her worth does not rush to give everyone access to her deepest places. She allows time to reveal character. She allows consistency to build confidence. And she allows wisdom, not loneliness, fear, attraction, or desperation, to decide who gets to know the most private parts of her heart. A wise woman understands that her past is a teacher, but it should never become the ruler of her present. What happened yesterday may have shaped her, challenged her, and even wounded her, but it does not have to determine how she experiences today. One of the greatest signs of emotional maturity is learning how to carry the lessons of the past without continuously carrying the emotional weight of it. Every person has a history. There may have been relationships that ended painfully, friendships that disappointed you, moments when you trusted the wrong person, or experiences that taught you difficult lessons about love and human behavior. These experiences matter. They can help you become wiser. But wisdom means extracting the lesson without repeatedly reopening the wound. When a woman enters a new relationship, she should be careful not to make the new person responsible for repairing everything the previous person damaged. The new man is not the former man. He should not automatically be punished for someone else's mistakes. If someone before him lied, it does not mean he will lie. If someone before him abandoned you, it does not mean he will abandon you. If someone before him failed to appreciate you, it does not mean you should constantly test whether this person will do the same. This is where self-awareness becomes essential. Sometimes people believe they are protecting themselves when they are actually allowing the past to control their behavior. They become suspicious of everything. They demand constant reassurance. They compare every situation with what happened before. They interpret ordinary mistakes as evidence that history is repeating itself. But protection without discernment can become a prison. You cannot build a healthy future while continuously demanding that the present prove it is not the past. A wise woman learns to observe before judging. She watches patterns instead of reacting to isolated moments. She gives a person the opportunity to demonstrate character over time. That does not mean ignoring genuine warning signs. It means learning the difference between intuition and fear. Fear says this happened before, so it must happen again. Wisdom says this happened before, so I will pay attention, but I will judge this person by their own character. That difference can transform a relationship. Another important lesson is to avoid turning past relationships into a measuring system for the present. Constant comparisons can create unnecessary distance. Imagine trying to build something new while repeatedly telling the person beside you how someone else behaved. My ex used to do this. My previous relationship was different. He used to understand me better. She received this from her partner, so why don't I? Eventually, the relationship stops being about two people discovering each other and becomes a competition with someone who is no longer even present. A wise woman does not need to erase her history, but she also does not need to repeatedly display it. If a past experience contains an important lesson, communicate the lesson. Instead of saying, "My ex always made me feel ignored," she can say, "Consistent communication is important to me because I value feeling connected." Instead of saying, "My previous relationship destroyed my trust," she can say, "Trust is something I take seriously and I value honesty." Notice the difference. One keeps the former relationship in the room. The other brings the lesson into the present. That is emotional maturity. Your past should educate your standards, not control your expectations. You are allowed to have standards because of what you have experienced. You are allowed to decide that certain behaviors are unacceptable. You are allowed to establish boundaries because life has taught you what you will and will not tolerate. But boundaries should be based on wisdom, not revenge. You should not punish someone for what another person did. You should not constantly test someone's love because someone else once disappointed you. And you should not force someone to repeatedly prove that they are different from a person they never were. Give people the opportunity to reveal themselves. Time is one of the greatest teachers in relationships. You do not need to interrogate someone's character every day. Watch what they consistently do. Watch whether their words match their actions. Watch how they respond when you disagree. Watch how they treat your boundaries. Watch whether they respect you when they are frustrated. Character reveals itself through patterns. And when you learn to observe patterns, you no longer need to depend entirely on stories about the past to understand the present. The past can be honored without being worshipped. You can remember what happened without allowing it to define who you are. You can forgive without forgetting the lesson. You can move forward without pretending nothing happened. That is what strength looks like. A wise woman does not deny her history. She simply refuses to let her history become her identity. She knows she is more than the relationship that ended. She is more than the betrayal she experienced. She is more than the rejection she survived. She is more than the mistakes she made. She takes the lesson, grows in wisdom, strengthens her boundaries, and walks forward with greater clarity. Because the goal of healing is not to become afraid of people. The goal is to become better at recognizing people. The goal is not to close your heart. The goal is to give your heart to people who have demonstrated that they can respect it. And when a woman learns that, she stops carrying yesterday into every conversation. She begins to live in the present. She begins to evaluate people by their character, and she creates something far more powerful than a relationship built on fear. She creates a relationship built on truth, maturity, respect, and choice. There is a level of maturity that begins when you stop feeling the need to explain everything. You do not have to defend every decision. You do not have to respond to every misunderstanding. You do not have to convince everyone that your intentions were good. And you certainly do not have to reveal every private thought simply because someone asks. Wisdom teaches you that communication is valuable, but unnecessary explanation can become a form of emotional exhaustion. A wise woman understands that silence is not always weakness. Sometimes silence is discipline. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes it is protection. And sometimes it is simply the decision to allow another person to think whatever they choose without making their opinion your responsibility. Think about how often people explain themselves because they are afraid of being misunderstood. They say more than necessary. They keep adding details. They defend themselves from accusations that were never proven. They try to convince someone to see them differently. And before long, they have given away far more information than the situation ever required. The problem is that excessive explanation can unintentionally communicate insecurity. When you know who you are, you do not need every person to agree with you. You can listen. You can clarify when clarification is genuinely necessary. You can apologize when you are wrong. But you can also walk away from conversations that are designed only to drain you. That is emotional maturity. There is a difference between healthy communication and constant justification. Healthy communication says, "This is how I feel, this is what I need, and this is what I am willing to do." Constant justification says, "Please understand me, please approve of me, please believe that I am a good person." One comes from self-awareness. The other often comes from fear. A wise woman learns to recognize that difference within herself. She asks, am I explaining this because it is necessary for the relationship, or because I'm afraid this person will reject me if they misunderstand me? That question can change everything. Because when you stop trying to control everyone's perception of you, you become freer. People are allowed to misunderstand you. People are allowed to disagree with you. People are allowed to make assumptions. Your responsibility is not to control their thoughts. Your responsibility is to control your character. If you know you acted with integrity, you do not need to spend your entire life proving it. And this principle is especially important in relationships. A healthy relationship requires communication, but it does not require endless interrogation, emotional testing, or constant disclosure. If a man asks you something meaningful, answer honestly. If there is a problem, discuss it. If something hurts you, communicate it. But do not turn every conversation into an investigation of your entire emotional history. Some things need time. Some feelings need reflection. Sometimes you need to understand yourself before you can accurately explain yourself to someone else. There is wisdom in saying, I need some time to think about this. There is strength in saying, I don't feel comfortable discussing that right now. There is maturity in saying, I understand your perspective, but I see it differently. You do not need anger to establish a boundary. You do not need aggression to protect your privacy. You do not need a long speech to say no. A simple, respectful boundary can be enough. And this is where many people misunderstand confidence. Confidence is not being loud. Confidence is not dominating every conversation. Confidence is not making people afraid to question you. Confidence is being secure enough to remain calm when someone disagrees with you. It is knowing that your worth does not disappear because somebody does not recognize it. A wise woman does not chase validation. She builds character. She builds competence. She develops emotional intelligence. She learns to communicate clearly. And then she allows her actions to support her words. Because eventually your behavior becomes your strongest explanation. If you are consistent, people will see consistency. If you are trustworthy, people will experience trustworthiness. If you are respectful, people will recognize respect. You do not have to announce every quality you possess. Live it. Let your character become the evidence. And remember, silence should never be used as a punishment. There is a difference between peaceful silence and manipulative silence. Manipulative silence says, I will ignore you until you suffer enough to give me what I want. Wise silence says, I refuse to react emotionally until I can respond with clarity. One creates distance, the other creates space for wisdom. So do not be afraid of quiet moments. Use them to think. Use them to reflect. Use them to regain emotional balance. Use them to decide whether a conversation deserves your energy. Because not every battle deserves your participation. Not every accusation deserves your defense. Not every opinion deserves your response. And not every person deserves access to your deepest thoughts. The wise woman understands that her words are valuable because she does not waste them. When she speaks with purpose. When she listens carefully. When she needs to correct something, she does it respectfully. And when silence is the better choice, she is comfortable with silence. That is not weakness. That is self-government. And when you learn to govern yourself, you stop allowing other people's emotions to dictate your behavior. You become calmer. You become clearer. You become harder to manipulate. Most importantly, you become more capable of building relationships based on mutual respect rather than fear, pressure, or constant validation. The goal is not to become a woman who says less. The goal is to become a woman who speaks with wisdom. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can communicate is not another explanation. It is the quiet confidence that says, I know who I am, I know what I believe, I know what I will accept, and I do not need to prove my worth to anyone. That is the kind of silence that comes from strength.